Welcome to Season 3 of the Moving On Podcast. I'm Jay Norman, and this is my wife.
Hi, I'm Jess Norman.
Babe, did you really think anybody would hang around to listen to a third season?
What is a really good word for the opposite of yes?
My thoughts exactly. And thank y'all for hanging around.
We sure appreciate it.
And on to the show. Hi, babe.
Hi.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Good. You have something odd on your head.
I have something, some headphones.
Yeah.
You haven't seen these in a long time.
Not in a while, and I think we've had this conversation the last 2 times we've done a podcast.
More than 2 times, but we're back,
Yeah.
And that's what matters, right?
We are here tonight,
Okay.
for sure. So, on the family side, we have had a busy summer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of work, but a lot of play.
Yeah.
And I guess since then, we've had a trip to South Padre for vacation.
Just you and I.
Well, you and I, and since we've recorded, the whole crew went.
Whole 7.
And it was a unique experience. They've all gotten older and involved in different things, and sometimes we had one at the beach, and sometimes we had 5, but everybody seemed like they had a good time.
Yep, sometimes these were best friends, and then those were best friends, and everyone was feeling their...
And sometimes some that were best friends are not always best friends, except at the beach.
It was very normal.
And so it's picking back up. We've got
Yeah.
some sports going on, volleyball, and we're fixing to start back basketball. And so it's fixing to get wild and crazy again.
We've had 2 big birthdays.
Yes, we have.
So, yeah, Lily turned 16 in September. Our bigs are only about 28 or 29 days apart.
Yep, so got 2 new drivers, 2 new insurance bills,
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
and probably some gas bills along with that.
Yep.
So, but we do have chauffeurs for our other ones, so that may
Yeah.
help a little bit too,
Oh,
and save us a
gosh.
few trips.
We do live
if we're
on
brave enough.
We live on a very dangerous highway, so that I don't know how that is even going to look.
May not be able to relent on that one.
We'll figure it out.
So on the farm, since farming-wise, sorry, Cody. Farming-wise, we finished cutting wheat finally in mid-July. We cut all of June into July. It was
Yeah.
the longest harvest we've had in a long time. It was really muddy.
Just kept going.
And we just couldn't quite get it done, and we had some neighbors that had trouble getting theirs out that we
Yeah.
ended up helping on that deal.
Yeah.
Then rolled into corn harvest, which was a pretty sad program for the year. I'm glad that one's over and going to move on to the next one.
We would roll into the field to cut it, and Jay would just drive up and be like, plow it under. Just
Yeah.
plow it under
No,
and drive away.
I just hope they could get me a load cut so I could leave with the truck and not have to watch how long it took them to load.
And that's what he did.
Yeah, it was a pretty sad year, but that's farming, and I mean, things could be worse, so we'll
Yeah.
take them as they are and
You
roll on to the next one.
You have to do what you can to keep your sanity.
And that is for
So
sure.
you turned into a super trucker.
That's right. So, babe, we haven't recorded in a while, and the
No.
last one was a pretty sad subject.
You.
And
I love that. It's my favorite subject.
Is it? Okay. I'm glad to hear that. But tonight we do have a very interesting subject.
Yes, my other favorite subject.
The
other side of my life raft.
A bunch to both of us, but sure a bunch to you.
Yes.
So, why don't you tell us who that is tonight?
Okay, so my best friend, you guys all know, is Kam Elliott, we like to call her, because she's the female Sam Elliott. And she has flown in for the weekend. We went down to the stockyards. We try not to let too many months go by without putting our hearts back together, because it's a pretty sorry feeling when we're apart. We looked our whole lives for each other. She ended up being the other part of the rescue crew. Her and Jay Norman make up the 2 parts of the rescue crew in my life, God sent, who looks for their best friend for 39 full years of their life, me. And she's sitting on my couch, which doubles as her bed in my loft. She says we can never sell this couch. And I'm very, very, very inspired by her story and by her life. And I'm so honored that she would agree to do this during her vacation here. And so, without further ado, here is Kam.
Hi.
How are you tonight?
I'm good. Although I do want to touch on that I'm not sure that I agreed to this. I think I was like bulldogged into it.
Feet are tied, y'all, I'll say. My inspiration comes from Kam, and doing this is that, we all at some point in our life and the things that happen to us, we feel like that we've had some hard times, and then you really talk to somebody else and you look back and realize that, what you had was a walk in the park compared to somebody, and just because I think Kam's story as she tells it tonight, I think when that's done, you'll realize the type of person that she is, and I think it's really amazing what all that she's been through, what type of person that made her into that Kam Elliott. I think it's all been a process in the making, and the final product's pretty amazing.
Thanks, Jay.
You're welcome.
He's my friend, really.
That was really, really sweet.
That was so nice.
Just a true story. So you two, why don't y'all tell the story of how you met, because you talk about social media a lot on here and how it's affected your life and how you've used it, but one very important thing is it brought you two together.
Yeah, we were going to sleep the first night she was here, and we were about to close our eyes, and she sleeps up in our loft in our bedroom, and you just hear from the loft, "We met on Instagram." And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, "I'm in your loft. We met on Instagram." Like, it's just so funny because I can't imagine life apart. And
I'm trapped in the loft, and
Yeah.
we met on Instagram.
Do you want to tell our story?
Sure.
Okay, you tell it. You're going to tell it wrong, and I'll fix the parts you tell
Okay.
wrong. Okay.
That's usually how this relationship works. So I think I had posted a video of me in the swather with the mountains, just a song. And you had commented that, "Oh, I think I know those mountains." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm in Colorado." And you said, "Those are my mountains." And I'm like, "I don't know where you live, but those are my mountains." And then the next part is probably yours to say.
Yeah, that's not even the beginning of our relationship. She posted well, is it?
Well, that's the first time we ever spoke, but I don't...
That was the first time we spoke, but that's not the first time I found you. The first time I found you was like probably a month before that. You had posted a 1-year anniversary of posting on social media, and you put in your caption that you hated Rascal Flatts, and we had just started our podcast, and our podcast is named after one of the lyrics in a Rascal Flatts song. And I was like, "Too pretty, doesn't like Rascal Flatts, not my people next." And I scrolled. Really scrolled.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that part until we became friends, and you confided in the fact that I was too pretty and I didn't like Rascal Flatts.
I've told it to you a bunch.
Yes.
Yeah. And then she put on there about the mountains, and my parents live a couple of hours from her in Montrose. And I was like, "I know those mountains." And then I think we really connected over
NFR.
NFR. I posted, or
I think you did. Yeah, you posted that you bought your tickets for NFR, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah, or an outfit or
Yeah,
something. So, or maybe I posted like a Western influencer and said like, "Get ready NFR" or something. And she was like, "Do you do the fashion?" I was like, "Yes, do you?" And that was it.
Yeah.
That was all we needed.
We like immediately started shopping together.
On Poshmark
Yep.
and Craigslist and different things. And
Yeah, I think y'all had a list of outfits pretty quick.
Yeah.
And so the NFR being the National Finals Rodeo, and that's a bond that they have, both Western fashion, and they did.
it's an event.
Yeah, we piled up some cost on that deal ever since, too.
Sorry, Jay.
That's quite all right.
Yeah, Jay's guys, his 3 best friends, are always like, "Does she have to have an outfit for the airplane ride also?" I'm like,
Heck
yes,
yeah.
it's very important. So the NFR goes for like 10 days. Cam and I fly in for at least 5 of them, but you have your daytime outfits and you have your nighttime outfits. So if you go in for 5 days, that's 10 outfits.
And And it's very important that you don't run the day outfit too long because you have to hurry and get back and change for the night.
Yes, and you can't be photographed in said outfit before the big event.
That's right.
So stuff sits in our closet for solid years before we get to wear it.
That's right.
So not to interrupt what you're talking about, but when you're talking about fashion and rodeo fashion, and you're talking about Kam being pretty and being Farmerdolls on Instagram, which is how y'all met, that kind of hides the fact what she does for a living.
Right.
And where the Kam Elliott piece really comes in.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
It gives you the wrong idea, right?
It does. For sure.
So I guess I should say the Farmerdolls thing. My dad, growing up, always called me his baby doll. Like, he still calls me the baby doll. So, and I think I first got my love of farming from my dad. So when I was going to name myself something on Instagram, I was like, oh, it's like my dad. Like I'm his Farmerdoll.
Like that.
So, and then it's dolls because Jojo, my dog, is with me at all times. So I work on a farm in southwest Colorado, and we grow wheat, oats, barley, safflower, pinto beans, and grass and alfalfa hay. And we also run a couple hundred head of beef cattle.
And so what is your part in all that?
I'm the tractor driver. Besides the tractor driver, I do run pretty much everything. The only thing I don't do is spray, and that's only because that's the only thing Boss Man likes to do. And I'm usually too busy doing other things during that time anyway. But yeah, I run everything. I run the swather, tractors, whatever. And then I also take care of the cattle. So whatever, I'm on a horse most of the time. When it comes to cows, we don't use those 4-wheeler things.
Nope.
So I move cows on horses, and in the springtime during calving season, I rope calves and tag them and do all the things.
That's awesome.
So the tie to all that is you do have a rodeo background. So your love of the fashion comes from being around rodeo your whole life, but also being on a horse. But I know there's a pretty amazing story that you told us before about the farmer you first met who really taught you kind of what you always, that saying, teach somebody, how to, what is it, catch a fish and, feed them for the rest of their life. And, and it kind of reminds me of that story. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I was a freshman in high school, we lived in Colorado, and my mom moved to Texas right after the summer between my freshman and sophomore year. And I had zero interest in coming to Texas. All of my friends, I was on the high school rodeo team in Colorado. All of my friends were there. I had a boyfriend. I mean, at that age, it's very important. So I did have to go with my mom for a little bit. And then I asked her, what can I do to be able to go back to Colorado? And she said that if I graduated high school, I could go. So I did as fast as I possibly could. And the day that I got my driver's license, I left from Texas by myself, drove to Colorado. And this farmer that Jay's talking about, he had a little house in town, and he let me live in that little house. And so I went to college. I was going to cosmetology school. That when I first left Texas, that was what I was going to go do. Well, to put myself through cosmetology school, I started working for the farmer. And, man, I didn't know anything about farming, like at all. I mean, I grew up rodeoing my whole life. I've been around horses and animals, but never, like, big equipment. I mean, I could back up a horse trailer. Anyway, which is an important skill.
Yes, it is.
So, so I started working for him during the day, or even in the evenings, like whenever I could get around my school schedule. And man, he had the most terrible equipment. Everything smelled like mouse crap.
Yeah.
It was just terrible.
Yeah.
No, definitely no GPS, no anything like that.
Yeah.
And he flood irrigated everything. So I used to mark the fields with the old markers, for flood irrigation. Oh man, it's so to think back then, and it was 20 years ago. I can't imagine being someone that's been in this game longer, to know what it was like 40 years ago.
Right.
Can't imagine. Anyway, he was just so awesome, and he took me under my wing, and I worked for him for a couple of years. And man, the things that he taught me were just, and he never one time ever looked at me like I was a 16-year-old girl, ever. Not one time. I mean, I would make a mistake and he'd be like, all right, come here, let me show you how to fix it. And let me show you how to weld. I mean, he taught me how to weld. I ripped out a gate one time. That's why he taught me how to weld. Anyway, he was just really, really great. And I still have a good relationship with him and his family. And I don't see him very often, but it's just pretty cool what he just instilled in me, in that you might be a 16-year-old girl, but he ain't going to treat you like it.
That's not very normal for a man that age to put that healthy of a respect in a 16-year-old girl that just ran away essentially from Texas.
He's like a proud papa now.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
He is totally from the Lord.
Yeah. So one of my favorite stories too is, I mean, that's when you're a kid. He takes you under his wing, and teaches you all that stuff. But then, in your present day job, you were telling us about the guy that asked, I think, for somebody else to come bale his hay originally or something. You had told us that story before.
Yeah, so we do a lot of custom stuff too. So like several folks around, I mean, and most of them I all know, but every once in a while somebody gets thrown in that hasn't been in the game for a couple years and maybe didn't have water and didn't raise enough hay for us to do anything for them. But anyway, so I had to road the swather about 7 miles down the highway, like a fairly busy highway, on a Sunday morning, and I meet this guy at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and the first thing, like, I don't know his fields at all, so I don't know where his ditch banks are, what kind of area, I don't know, so I need to see, I need to talk to him. His hay is knee deep, and you can't see when the hay is knee deep. So I step out of the swather, and he looks right at me, and he says, "Are you sure you know how to run that thing?" And I was like, all the things were going through my head,
Right.
like all the not nice things.
Right.
And I just remember telling myself, like, just shut up and don't say anything,
Right.
and just do your job, and then he's gonna have his own opinion about you. And so that's what I did. And he sat there on his four-wheeler for 3 days watching me work that field. I mean, I cut it, and then I showed up and raked it, and then I came and baled it. And the last day that I was there, right when I was taking all the equipment out of there, he came up and he like gave me a high five, shook my hand, and he said he was really, really sorry for judging me because I was a girl.
Wow.
And so now every time, that was several years ago, but now every time, we're going to do something for him, he always says, "Well, I sure hope Cam's going to be the one that does it."
Oh my gosh. I love that kind of stuff. And you never know why God placed you in his life for future things, as far as his relationships with other girls, and things that he could miss out on for being so narrow-minded.
Yeah.
Like the part that you played in his life is so neat.
Yeah, it's been, I've seen him, I see him several times, like throughout the year at the sale barn or something.
Yeah.
And it's a little strange to me still. Like, he'll ask me questions when he sees me.
Really?
Like that, he knows that I know.
Yeah.
And he'll walk right up and ask me, but I'm like, that's the same guy that didn't think I could run that swather.
That's incredible.
That's got to be a good feeling too.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and I think that's what, when Jess, asked me about having you on here, I think that's what's unique about you being on our podcast is we're farmers and we talk about it a lot, and people know that's our life and that's what you do. But just as important, the other part of our podcast, having a blended family, it's something that you grew up in, have firsthand experience in, some of it not so great, and some of it great. And so take us all the way back to your story about when your parents split and kind of how things played out from there, because it's a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, so I was 2 years old when my parents got divorced. We lived in Texas, and both of my mom and my dad were both from California. So when they got divorced, we all went back to California. So I always lived, fairly close to my dad, at a young age, and my mom got remarried when I was about probably 8 years old, and he wasn't that awesome of a person, and he had a severe alcohol problem. Anyway, so my mom went through a whole bunch with him, a whole bunch of really not nice things. I remember one time when I was probably 10 years old, they lived upstairs, like in a kind of a loft, and I remember hearing something, and then the next morning, I never said anything to her. It was bedtime, and the next morning when she was taking us to school, I remember she had a big old black eye, and I was like, what happened? And she said that she tripped over the fan, and like, I remember all of us being like, the fan cord was not even anywhere that you could have tripped over,
Yeah.
but not really knowing, like knowing but not knowing.
How he protects us when we're little.
Yeah, it's crazy. So lots of that when I was a kid, and it started getting like more towards my sister and I, like the older we got, and my mom was just about to leave him when I was probably 11, and she had talked to us about it, like, okay, we're gonna do this, but it was kind of like it was our little secret, and we're the three of us girls. I had a sister that's 2 years younger than me, and it was just like us. We were like the three little amigos, and then my mom found out she was pregnant, and I just remember that taking like all the wind out of my sails. I just was like devastated because this was going to change our whole life. And I mean, I was so bitter about it that when my brother was born, I didn't even go to the hospital. I mean, I was 12 years old, and I was just like, no. Like, I don't want anything to do with him. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want anything to do with any of this. Like, this totally just ruined our plan. And my brother was born just after Halloween. And my little sister had bought him a little clown costume because we thought he might have been born, by Halloween. So they brought him home in the hospital in that little clown thing. And my mom asked me, and I have the picture. It's one of my favorite pictures to this day. But, like, you can see all over my face in that picture. Like, the first time I held him, I'm like, I don't give 2 sheets of anything for anything that I thought I felt. Like, as soon as I was like, this little baby is mine, and I'm going to do everything I can to, like, protect him from everything. Immediately from everything that my sister and I went through, And I think I even said something to my mom, like, he's not gonna grow up like this. Like, we can't let him grow up like this.
Wow.
And he wasn't even a year old when she, was able to stand up for herself and her kids, and we were able to leave that situation. So it's kind of one of those things that, I think that you look from the outside in, you always look at somebody that's like in an abusive thing, any sort of relationship, whether it be with, a spouse or even just a friendship that's abusive, and you're always like, why can't you just drop the rope?
Right.
Why can't you just let that go? But it takes a lot when you're beat down like that.
Yeah. You don't have the tools that you need. He takes them.
Yeah, my mom is the strongest person I've ever met, and man, that she like was able to get us out of that situation, and then just full on raised 3 kids by herself. Yeah. And like the boss, she did it.
And y'all are all 3 so incredible.
Yes.
Like just and thriving, not just peaking in high school, but thriving at your age. I mean, right now, Kam is on top of her game in life. I mean, everything is just, anything that she puts her hand on right now is just so incredible and fun and great. And then Kayla, do you want to tell them about Kayla?
Yeah, so my sister is, like I said, 2 years younger than me. She has a beautiful little family, and her daughters are killing it.
Yeah.
She has a 13-year-old. Oh, she's almost 14 next week. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. My sister's old.
Yeah.
So she has a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old and a almost 3-year-old little boy. And she's married, and she lives about 50 miles from me, so I do get to see her a lot. And I also get to see my nieces. They're barrel racers and doing awesome. So that's fun. And then my brother, the one that wore the clown costume on the way home from the hospital.
Kayla's main news.
Oh, yeah. So she went just 2 weeks ago. She went for the first time since she's been a mom to do anything by herself. I mean, she goes to barrel races all the time, but she's always goes as a mom, and she usually does run there too. But anyway, so she left all the kids at home with grandparents, and she went by herself. She has this cool little colt that she raised all by herself and has been training, and She did awesome. She was the reserve national champ at this barrel race in Pueblo, Colorado, and she won a all expense paid to the all-in barrel race in Vegas.
That's incredible.
So that's so exciting for her, and especially for the first time she's done anything like that for herself and on something that she has worked so hard to build.
It's incredible.
It really
Anything to me like that as an adult is so inspiring, because we kind of compete in high school and college, and then we think, okay, we're done. It's our kid's turn. And I'm so inspired that she was able to pull that off. It's so cool.
Yes, it's really neat.
And then Cody, where your mom manifested the clown outfit.
Yes. Yeah, so my brother's a bullfighter and a rodeo clown. Oh gosh, it's so funny.
Fitting you
It
wore the
is
clown
so
uniform.
funny.
Right. We actually reenacted that picture a few years ago, because I have the picture of me when I first was holding him for that first time. And so I went to a rodeo, and he was all dressed up, and I was like, hey, can we recreate that picture? And so he
Yeah.
held me like I was a little baby, and he's in his clown thing.
That's
It was
awesome.
pretty cute.
So, to go back from my standpoint, Jess and I grew up in families where there was no divorce. I mean, we don't have any experience with it outside of, our own divorces. I think you bring a unique experience by going through all that as a kid, and I guess just like your mom discussing those things with you, I guess I would be interested in your point of view, how you would see that now, her talking to you as a kid, and how all that kind of fit in and molded you into the person you are.
Well, I think my relationship with my mom has always been so tight, and she was so honest with us growing up because I think of our situation. I think she knew that like other little kids at school probably, hopefully, weren't dealing with what we were dealing with. So, and she also didn't have any friends. I mean, there was no friends allowed, and so I think that was why probably our bond was so tight, because I was like, she didn't have to tell me things. I already kind of knew because I lived there.
Right.
Which I wouldn't wish that upon anyone, for sure. But I don't really feel like it took away from me being a kid. I mean, nothing that my mom talked about took away from that, but the situation that we were living in probably obviously definitely took away some of my little innocence, But on my dad's side, I mean, my mom was never with anyone where we were like a blended family, but my dad was. He got married when I was 5 years old, and I hate this part. Just like everything was a big secret all the time, and I just didn't. That never felt good as, the biological child, And then I didn't live with my dad, so I was kind of like, we always felt like we were kind of the outsiders because we didn't live with him. And then everything was kept secret from us. They had a secret wedding that we didn't know about and weren't there. And so then there was family photos in the house, that we weren't in. So it just always sort of felt awkward, and even
with your stepbrother in, which
yeah.
is huge. I mean, that puts an immediate pit against the two of you.
Yeah, and we were little. I was 5. So he was probably only 2 or 3. So, he was super little, and he never really grew up without my dad, which it was awesome that my dad stepped up and totally, took him in. It just was like an awkward feeling for my sister and I to not feel like we were part of the family, Like
sure.
we would go to their house for holidays or whatever, whatever visitation, and it was never like an equal thing. Like my sister and I had to fly there, so we may get like a sweatshirt for Christmas where he would get like a dirt bike for Christmas, and it was just always like, just sort of felt like, I always tease that we felt like the redheaded stepchildren.
Yeah. You said this morning that you would watch him ride his dirt bike in your hoodies,
Yeah.
in your sweatshirts that you got.
Yeah, we'd be like, well, we got sweet hoodies, we're warm.
It's not funny, but funny all at the same time.
Cam is very redheaded.
Yes.
That is true.
So you told us about how you and your sister never felt like you were treated equal, and that there was a lot of stuff that they didn't share with you and talk to you about. And I know that you had a pretty strained relationship with your stepmom. Why don't you elaborate on that? Because we've got people that listen that are all dealing with these same things. I mean, we've dealt with it.
Yeah, I think it was a strained. I think strained is a good word. I think it was a strained relationship from almost the very beginning because of that feeling of we weren't included. And then the other thing I think was so huge. My mom nor my dad, I never ever remember either one of them saying one bad word about each other ever. Like nothing. I'm sure that they thought those, but
which makes me love them a million times more, and that's not possible.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm definitely not saying that they didn't think those things, but they never voiced them to us at all.
It takes a lot of self-control.
Yeah. But that wasn't always the case with her. You know, if she felt something towards my mom, she never ever at one time hesitated to say something.
Sure.
And then, you know, coming from where my sister and I came from, like, my mom was so important to us. We were almost like her protectors,
That's what
you
I
know,
was gonna say.
because of the situation that she was always in.
And the abuse.
Yeah. So when someone would say something bad about my mom, you know, and it could be just something super small, but it was like, why would that come out of your mouth? And so then that would just add to my sister and I's feeling of like, we don't belong here, you know?
So we've said that before, is like a home where the mom or a home where the other parent is not honored cannot be a safe space.
Yes.
Like there's no possible way your children are going to feel safe in a home where the other parent is disrespected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your kids love all their parents the same. I think she made some choices that weren't the best, but I also think that she learned from those.
Yeah. Well, it's always something that we've talked about for a long time. Like you just said, we've always made it a point not to ever say anything negative. And if there's one piece of advice that I received from people in our divorce, that was it. Just do not ever say anything negative. Just keep your mouth shut, and it'll come full circle. And I think, you know, the situation you were in, you got to see that from your parents, but you didn't, you know, see it from a step parent. And obviously that made for a strained relationship that I think you told us that ended up being how long of a time frame?
Yeah, they were married for 20 years, so I was 25 when that relationship dissolved.
Wow. And so you dealt with that from a very young kid, and I guess not being there all the time, you didn't feel like it was equal, but even when you were there, you had to deal with that. And I guess my question to you would be, you know, what advice would you give somebody that's in that situation, just coming from your standpoint? Because most of the people we've talked about, it's been from our standpoint, not the kid's standpoint.
Well, I think, you know, when my dad got divorced, I remember him calling me and saying, I have good news and I have bad news. Which one do you want first? And he told me that he was getting divorced, and I was like, shoot, then what's the bad news?
Yeah.
Or then what's the good news, you know, because that was his bad news. And I was just, that wasn't bad news to me, you know. And we talked, it was probably the first time in my whole life that I had ever talked to my dad about how we felt about her. You know, we never did, because as a little kid, like, what are you gonna say? I mean, you know, we don't like her. We don't think she treats us great. You know, I mean, we were there, you know, for a week at Christmas and, you know, a couple of weeks in the summertime, and that was it. Like, you know, we spoke to my dad on the phone all the time, but our time with him was very limited. So it didn't feel like enough to, you know, bring up this really uncomfortable conversation, especially as a kid. And yeah, so I just remember him saying, like, why didn't you ever say anything? Well, it was just uncomfortable. That's why you don't say anything. But it also was uncomfortable that we didn't say anything.
No.
And on the other hand, with my mom, I had, you know, such an open line of communication with her that I would have told her anything. You know, anything at all. So really, like, you know, communicating when, like, something isn't feeling right, or it doesn't make you feel good, or you find yourself thinking about it when you're going to sleep at night, or, on the school bus in the morning or whatever, then that's probably time that you should say something,
Yeah.
Like, instead of just keeping it in, and then 20 years later,
Right.
He's like, well, things probably would have changed if you would have told me.
Yeah.
Right. You're not one to say. You're not one to disrupt someone's joy.
No, and I mean, I'm such an introvert anyway, like,
Yeah.
pretty much
You'll
probably.
get by it on your own.
Yeah, and then unless you ask me straight up, I'm probably not going to say anything, even if
Yeah.
I have a mouthful of it.
Yeah.
Well, and too, I think to me the important part is that if somebody's listening that's in that situation, even if you're in a bad place where your thoughts aren't good and aren't putting that child first, I mean, you have to go somewhere to find the resolve to to keep your mouth shut, to try to do everything you can, especially in your case where you're only there for a limited time. I mean, how hard is that really,
Right.
to make it work? I mean, you gotta, you don't have to dig all that deep
Yeah.
to me to be able to fix that.
Yeah, it's always helped me, what you're talking about. It's always helped me to think of, if my kids had a stepmom, if they were treating my kids the way I was treating my stepchildren, would I be happy about it?
That's good.
I try to envision, if I'm talking to my stepson, I envision Cash talking to a stepmom, and is that situation going good, or would that really upset me?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the way I'm talking and treating and loving on my stepchildren is also another way I'm loving on my own kids, because it's all going together in my head.
Yes.
Like I'm honoring it all together.
Yep.
Yeah, you have your own accountability for
Yeah.
what the situation
Because
needs to
that's
be.
what God teaches us. If we don't forgive, we won't be forgiven. If
Yeah.
we don't give grace, we won't be given grace. And so not everything is just between me and you. We're all part of the body, and we're all connected, and it all affects all, And
Yeah.
I think you have to be really careful with that.
You do, for sure. And that brings me to another part of this story when you talk about grace, and Cam sitting over here that, I mean, she has a lot of reasons to be resentful and to be upset. And I know your situation with that, with that stepmom later on in life that took a turn you probably never saw. That had to be her willing, and had to be you willing to accept it. I mean, tell us about that story.
Yeah, so let's see. I had been married. So they were still married when Jack and I got married in 2008. So it would have been 2010 when they got divorced. So for Jack and I's 10-year wedding anniversary, he was pipeline welding in Carson City, Nevada, which was fairly close to where she was. And her sister was always one of my favorite people in the whole world.
Yeah.
I mean, when we would go visit my dad, we would just couldn't wait to go see Aunt Suzanne, because she was so great. And she was sort of our little reprieve from that situation.
I have zero examples of what you're talking about. Zero. I have never, ever heard of the step aunt being the savior of the story.
Oh, she is. She's absolutely, and her husband too. I mean, they're just the greatest people. Jack and I have been to their house several times and stayed with them even, and back when they were still divorced or still married, Jack and I would go stay with them and not go stay with my dad and her.
gosh.
I mean, that's how tight we are with her. Anyway, so she lived just probably 30 minutes away from where Jack was, and when he's working on the road, he works 10, 12 hours a day. So I flew in for the weekend to spend our anniversary together, but during the day I was just hanging out in the hotel. So I had reached out and asked if we could meet up and have lunch, and she obviously was like, yes, absolutely, I would love to. But she said that her sister was in town, and she was wondering if that would be okay. And, I was like, yeah, that's fine, I mean,
You're not going to say no.
No, I'm not going to say no. And it had been so long at that point, at this point I was, 33 years old, 34. So I'm like, it's okay, So she came and she gave me a huge hug, and it was almost just like that one little meeting. She gave me a hug and, sort of apologized. And I could just see that, like, it was all water under the bridge at that point. And, like, we could just go on from there. And she said that she loved us and that, you know, I mean, obviously we were in her life for 20 years. I mean, that's a pretty large chunk of time. And so she didn't want to lose us. And my sister's not quite there yet, but I've accepted her apology and we've moved on. And I mean, she texts me every now and again, and I text her happy birthday. And you know, it's not a really deep relationship, but it's definitely more than I had when I was a child, and more than I really ever thought I would ever have.
Oh my gosh, it reminds me of a friend telling me the other day about how your life is essentially you going down the river on a raft, and the things that you grab hold on to that you don't let go of, that you're supposed to let go of, and you're dragging the river bottom with these things.
Yeah.
And to hear of you letting go of such a huge drag, you know, to propel you into this next season of life.
Yeah, I've always felt like that too, like holding on to whatever negative energy, it's really only affecting me and hurting me.
Yep.
I mean,
And
number
why would
one.
you want that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Anybody got time for that?
Well, and two, I mean, you doing that for her allowed her to, you know, to get that load off herself that she had obviously carried for a long time, as she 25 years later is
Very gracious.
coming around to, you know, to try to, you know, fix it.
Yeah.
Kam, if you're able and willing, do you have any advice or thoughts to a step-parent or even a stepchild that has harbored, you know, feelings that are detrimental to themselves or to a former step-parent?
I have something that I think could help you segue into it, if you don't mind me joining you. But the thing that Kam, she already knows what I'm going to say when I intro it, but the thing that Kam has taught me, the one sentence that Kam taught me that has single-handedly changed my entire life because of who I am and my personality is, you cannot punish someone for something you're unwilling to speak to them about. And a lot of times we're kind of making up what that person thinks or what that person thought about that situation. And if they thought that, then I think this. But you honestly, unless you sit down, because you're usually wrong.
Yes.
When you fill in the blanks, this is what my sister here on the couch has taught me, is when you fill in your own blanks, you are going to fill them in so incorrectly. And so you cannot emotionally punish someone for something that you are unwilling to sit down and talk to them about. And a lot of times we don't want to do that part. We would just like to continue along with the punishment and the whining and the venting to each other, and that is what increases the animosity of the entire situation, because when you do finally sit down with someone and talk through those very private feelings that you have, you'll find that you both were terribly, terribly wrong.
Yes. Assumptions, I think, are like rooted in almost always evil.
Toxic.
Yes. Assumptions. I mean, you can assume how someone feels. You can be assuming what they think, or assuming what they think about you, whatever, you know. You can assume everything, and that those assumptions almost always are not accurate.
Because you're just reading subtext.
Right.
Well, how do you know he feels that way? Well, one Christmas, when I said this, he got up to go get a drink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're these little compilation of little moments that we've put together to derive this bogus truth that's incorrect. Our truth, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think like one of the biggest things that I've learned, I mean, really in my whole life, but from growing up, is to have the confidence in yourself and in what you're feeling. And so have that confidence, and then take that confidence to do something good with it. Take the confidence and, you know, stand up for yourself, whether it be that, or have the confidence to have a conversation with someone, or have the confidence to write a note to someone if you can't talk to them,
Right.
or you don't feel like you can.
Right.
You know, writing a letter, I'm an introvert, and I don't really usually like to say a lot of words, So writing letters have been huge for me. I mean, when there was something, even with the relationship I have with my mom, there's times that I didn't feel like I could say it, and so I would just write her a letter. And then she would either write me a letter back or, talk to me about it or whatever. But it's opens the line of communication, and in doing that, almost never can come something bad.
Right.
I mean, you're going to be able to hear their point of view or get off your chest what you're feeling or, whatever. And it could just be one little small word that you say to whether it be the kid or the parent.
Yeah.
That changes everything.
Oh, yeah. Everything. One little sentence that you're needing to hear changes your whole thought about the whole thing.
Yes.
I know another key point thing that you've taught me that has changed everything for me is I was going through something this summer, and I came to you and I finally confided in you with it, and you said, I knew you were going through something. You've been a pill. Like, you've really been hard to get along with. And I took it as you trying to shame me. You need to act right, and you need to be sweet, and you need to be nicer, and you need to be nicer to all of us and stop acting that way. And I said, well, you haven't been lovely either, to kind of combat you. And I was like, you haven't been lovely either. And you go, it's not my job to be lovely. And I go, but it's not my job either. And you were like, yeah,
exactly.
It's not. And I was taught my entire life. We've talked on this podcast so much how I was raised to be good and be sweet and be nice and be kind. And anything that fell out of those bounds is such a shame for me. So I thought that you were shaming me, and you weren't shaming me. You were saying, I'm your best friend, and I've noticed that you've been pretty ornery. What's up?
Yeah.
That's as simple as what you were saying. And my head said that you were shaming me back into good behavior. And so that's something that I've really learned from you, is how to say no more, how about have boundaries. And several times a day I have to say, it's not my job to be lovely.
Yes.
It's not my job to be lovely. I'd like to be lovely, and I will when I want to, but it's not my job to be lovely.
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
trying
you're-
not to laugh too loud, but go ahead.
Jay, would you like to thank Cam?
All lovely is all I got to
And
say.
you could get her dinner
It's all
okay,
lovely.
to say thank you?
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
Cam.
That's so rude.
Yeah, I think just to go along that lines, I think so many people rely on other people for their happiness.
Yes.
And you're not going to find your happiness
where
in
it is.
someone else making
True
you feel happiness.
Mhm, that's false. It's a false.
Yes. So you need to
It's
find that in whatever situation you're in. You need to figure out what's going to bring you that happiness, and then work on that.
Right.
Not assuming someone else is going to bring that to
Right.
you.
And I will tell you, I mean, something about you and Jay, I've come to really rely on you when I am in a pickle and in my head, and I've got 15 different things that I cannot sort out. My head just says, call Cam or call Jay. And you're the same person, cut from the same cloth, but you both immediately have the answer. And that changes my life. My daily life is that I'm one phone call away from Jay, or I'm one phone call away from Cam. And it's not it's not a solution that I ever see. It's not even one of my 6 options. It's this 7th one that my Enneagram and my personality never even entertained. And it's so quick and it's so simple. And I'm like, thank you. And we get off the phone.
It's
And
just like that too. Usually there's like some words followed, like, thanks for
Yeah.
being my number one a-hole.
yes, yes.
So, Kim, all that being said, I mean, I think that is one of your greatest attributes, is that you can pretty well be happy wherever you've landed. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of that goes back to your childhood and dealing with the different situations and being scattered really all over the country. And I think it's worth going back to talk about, I mean, you left home as a 16-year-old,
Lily.
Yeah.
just like the kids we just had turned
Lily
16,
is 16 and
left Texas and drove to Colorado by yourself. And I start that. I would like to you to retell that story, but I think that leads into, I mean, somewhat really kind of a little bit of a rambling life a lot of moving, a lot of different areas to where you are now. And we've mentioned Jack a few times, but I think tell that story real quick about 16 and leaving, and then tell us about Jack when you get that gets you to a stopping point. And especially now, even in the last 2 years of your life, that stopping point has even become more a line in the sand.
Yeah. It's a refinement. It's a really respectful refinement that she walked through that fire all those years, but it does add a zero tolerance policy for any weakness in any of her best friends named Jess. Zero.
Don't you forget it. Okay, so the day that I got my driver's license, I was 16 years old. I had spent the whole summer before that farming when we were still in Colorado. But so I worked my tail off to get this. I pulled this old pickup out of the boneyard, paid for everything, worked my butt off to get this truck running, and so it was good to go. We drove to the DMV. I got my driver's license, and from the DMV parking lot with my truck already loaded, I hugged my mom goodbye, and I drove 550 miles by myself to Colorado. And I immediately started cosmetology school, and I think that took me like around 6 or 7 months to go through. And that was when I started working on the farm. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't tough. I mean, there was times, I remember my boyfriend at the time, his mom, she would go to Sam's Club or Costco or whatever, and she would buy me like a whole big old thing of ramen noodles and like a case of chili. And like, I can make some mean meals with some chili and ramen noodles and corn, because that was all. She would just buy me like these big cases of canned corn, chili, and ramen noodles. And I have eaten them every possible way that you can ever imagine. And actually, still to this day, that's one of my favorite tractor snacks, because I used to just crunch up the ramen noodles and then just eat the noodles like crunchy out of the bag. That was my tractor snack. And so I mean, it was definitely tough. And then I paid for my my own schooling and everything too. So it was a lot of eating ramen noodles at home.
Yes.
But yeah, I made it, and I got my cosmetology license, and I mean, then from there, man, I worked all over the place. I worked at some really fancy spas in Telluride, and then I've went to Arizona and rode horses. I mean, I've done everything. I've waitressed and bartended, but anyway, so then I guess that's kind of right where I was. So when I was in my early 20s, I think 21, I was working in Arizona. I was kind of like a 21-year-old snowbird. In the wintertime, I would go to Arizona and ride horses and rodeo. And then in the summertime, I'd come back home. And my mom always kind of had she's lived in Colorado at this point. So I had like a landing spot at her house for the summer. So anyway, I had come home for the summer, and I was just fixing to go back to Arizona. And my sister was like, hey, let's go dancing tonight. So we went over to Durango and we went dancing. And so a whole group of girlfriends that I rodeoed with and my sister, we all go to the bar and we're dancing. And this guy comes up and asks me to dance. And I recognized him, but I didn't know who he was. And so anyway, I ended up dancing with him the whole night, and he kept asking me for my phone number. And I was like, I'm not like interested. I'm leaving, And so the next day, he knew my sister. My sister worked at the co-op gas station, which is, like a co-op gas station.
Sure.
So everybody gathers, yeah.
Yeah, everyone knows. So he knew my sister worked there. So he went in the next morning and asked my sister for my phone number, and she betrayed me and gave it to him.
She's such a betrayer.
Yeah, so then I kept getting all these phone calls. I was going to be home in Colorado for like another week, and he called me every single day for a week, and every single day I had some excuse. I had to do laundry, or I had to pick my brother up from school, or something. And then finally on like the last day before I went out with him, he called and he said, okay, listen, you did your laundry yesterday, and you packed today, and you picked your brother up the night before that, and you had dinner with your mom the night before that, so there's no more excuses. I'm picking you up and you're going to dinner with me. And I was like, okay, I guess. And then now here we are. We've been married little over 13 years.
That's my friend.
Yes.
That the way Jay is Cam's friend, that's my friend. And he's been missing this weekend. I've been missing him every second.
Yeah, for sure. So, Kim, you meet Jack in obviously y'all been married for 12 years. You had kind of a rambling lifestyle. Jackson had somewhat of a rambling lifestyle, and y'all finally settled down now to, I guess, to where you have a permanent home.
Yeah. Yeah, the first 12 years of our marriage, he was pipeline welding. And so he would be gone for usually 6 months at a time. Always came home for Christmas. That was my one rule, Christmas at home. But other than that, when I'm farming during farming season, I would go home for 3 weeks and I would do everything I possibly could, get everything done where I'd be able to take 1 week off. And there was times that, I was almost staying 24 hours in a tractor just to be able to get everything done so I could go for a week, and then I would fly to just wherever he was and stay with him for a week.
Wow.
And yeah, so he quit doing that 2 years ago. He's been home 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And we had to have a little bit of a conversation about this is my house and this is how we live at my house. Yeah. There's laundry baskets here at my house.
They FaceTimed us about a year ago, maybe. Y'all can correct me if that's wrong. And Kam had this huge smile on her face because Jackson had been offered a pipeline position, and she had this huge smile like, this will be great, right? And he's like, I don't know. And she's like, well, let's think about it for just a minute. And she knew he wasn't going, but it was all part of the joke, like, hey there, let's wait for just a second and consider this, because A, the money is so good, and B, my boo likes some alone time sometimes.
I sure do. That was the toughest part, I think, like living with someone all the time. And especially someone. Yeah, exactly. And then, especially somebody like him who's like you, who needs all the attention.
Constant petting.
Yes.
And Aunt, do you still love me? Because you said it an hour ago, but this hour you seem mad.
Yeah, and it's so funny. He's still, after all these 15 years together, he still asks me when I'm being quiet, are you okay? Uh-huh. Is something wrong?
I've gotten better about that, Humbe.
Yeah.
Thanks, because I have. I did it my entire life.
Yeah. No, that's still a thing.
So, Kim, through everything you've been through, I think if you could ever say the statement of a person's faith has been tested, I think yours has been tested many times. And I guess, tell us about your faith and where you're at.
I think, number one, just going through everything I've been through, if you don't have faith in something, you will not be okay. Mm-hmm. And that was something my mom always, instilled in us. From a tiny kid is, having faith and grace and all the things, I definitely talk to him more than I talk to anyone else in the world.
Right.
And it's easy for me to talk to him. Mm-hmm. And I feel, comforted by that. Whether it just be me sitting in a tractor seat and being like, hey, let's have a little conversation, Yeah. So, that happens a whole bunch. And I also feel like my life, everything I do in my life brings me closer to him, whether I'm on the back of a horse at 10,000 feet, looking at a snow-topped mountain, just being like, look at what he made.
He's a show-off.
He's such a show-off, and he built this beautiful thing and gave me this beautiful animal to ride and these other beautiful animals to take care of.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how you couldn't feel so close to him when you're in those situations. And even on the farming side, like putting all of my faith into like planting that stuff, and then go out there and you see those rows popping up and it's like, man, he's good. Mm-hmm. It's just so good. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I have a great relationship with him, and probably one that nobody's ever heard me pray in public, but you guys have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, it's I just don't feel like you could, or I couldn't go through everything that I went through as a kid, and not know that he wasn't there. He was there watching over everything, because there were several situations that could have gone way awry if I didn't have somebody way bigger than me.
Well, and I think that tells a lot more about who you are, is because several people in situations like that are left angry at the Lord. thinking that, why did you allow these things to happen to me? And you and I are same on that, where when we do go through those things, we don't, the blame never even touches on him with me. And for you and I are more, gosh, thank you for getting us out of there alive.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for that solid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it never even occurs to me that he was to blame for any of it.
No, never.
To me, the most amazing thing, knowing you two and knowing your story and talking about it more today, is, it's just the foresight of the plan that he has to walk you through everything you've been through in your life, to be the person you are, to meet Jess. And we talked earlier about social media, and y'all have another deal with 3 other girls called the Huddle Co. But for him to walk you through the fire, to get you to this point, to have the faith, number one, you being an introvert, being on here and being on another podcast and being on social media every day singing in a tractor.
Yeah.
I mean, for him to mold you into that person, to be sitting here today on a podcast, to do the things y'all are doing with the Huddle Co. that are a lot, that are just doing a lot of other things for other people where y'all are giving back. And, that's one thing I would ask you, being an introvert and all the stuff that you've been through. I mean, is it your way of feeling like giving back? Is it just something you enjoy, or all the above? Because, I mean, you've got your own social media deal, and then what y'all are doing. It's just phenomenal what y'all have done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Well, first, I think that if you would have told me 5 years ago that I was going to be on a podcast, now 2 podcasts, and, be on social media, I probably would have believed the singing and the tractor, but probably not with a, video that thousands of people can see.
Yeah.
But I would have told you I'd rather be kicked in the face with a golf shoe than have that be my life. And it just, the way the whole thing happened is, really, it was just so organic and natural, and it started so smoothly that it never really felt like, if I would have overnight just had, several thousand people seeing my stuff, that would have been scary. But it went so slow, in the beginning, and I gained so many awesome relationships by, these people have been talking to me for 3 years, and they know they know my dog's name, and they know my husband's name, and they know that you guys are my best friends.
I know what you did all day yesterday,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I watch your stories religiously.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, so it happened so it happened so smoothly that it doesn't feel weird at all, and it is kind of nice, even for being an introvert. I don't have to talk to anyone on social media. I can just text,
Yeah.
and so it is kind of a nice outlet.
Nice.
And I just think it's really, really cool. There's tons of ag, women on social media, but I feel like mine is a little different. I'm not the farm wife, and so I think that's different, and that's sort of
For sure.
appealing to people to see, just a girl doing. Really, I'm just a girl doing my job.
Yeah.
To me. Anyway, so it's been really, really fun, and then meeting you guys, how a year and a half ago probably, Jess and I were talking one day, and we're like, it would be really fun to do this giveaway because we have so many friends that are from all over the country, and it would be really fun to do a giveaway where each person gave their favorite things from their hometown or their home state. And so we got a really cool group of girls together, and that's kind of where we got a bond with some other girls.
Yeah.
And then
I told you pick a few and I would pick a few.
Yeah. So we did, and I think we got a great group, and then from that group became a really solid, awesome group of like-minded, girls. And how I remember the story going is I'm on a horse gathering cattle last fall, and you send me a thing saying, will you be on the podcast? And in my mind, she's asking me to be on moving on.
On a new podcast.
No, that's not what you said.
Okay, sorry.
She said, will you be on the podcast? And I said, sure. sure, I'll be on the podcast, because at this point I'm comfortable with them. And that is not what she was meaning. She was meaning, well, do you want to start a podcast with me? And so anyway, by the time I got off the horse and realized what was going on, I didn't fall off. But by the time I got off the horse and I realized what she was saying, she had already blown up social media saying we were starting a dang podcast.
Yeah. Well, and I remember it so differently, which is the same way Jay and I started our podcast. We remember the start of it so different. And when you think about it,
common denominator there, huh?
Yeah,
Right?
there is a common. It's me, but it's okay. I mean, we all have our podcasts. It's fine. But I wanted to start a girls only podcast because there's things that we can say when it's just us girls. We feel a little bit more comfortable. And so I asked Jay, would you care? We've talked about this on the podcast before.
Oh, yeah.
Would you care if I started my own podcast? And he's like, Jess, I can be out any second. This is your podcast. You take it. And I was like, no, I love our podcast. I just want one other one where I don't have to wait for you to get out of the field. I can do it whenever I want with whoever I want.
And isn't it strange now that you have to wait for me to get out of the field?
Yes. So I went to my 4 best girlfriends, and I thought I worded it as, would you guys want to I'm going to start a new podcast. Would you guys want to be on it? Within the hour, several of them had bought mics, and instead of correcting them and being like, I just felt like God was going, I said, host it with each other. And so because Jay came in for lunch and he said, okay, he kissed me on my forehead. He walked towards the door and he said, neat, Huddle Co podcast. And we had already started the Huddle Co. We had started gathering around families that were hurting. We had talked about different things that we could do together. And he spoke that over me. It all was happening without me doing it. Because I don't feel like I was smart enough to realize what was supposed to be happening. And I didn't think all of the 4 would say yes. And not only did they say yes, they'd all gotten on Amazon and bought mics and were so excited, and it was just incredibly organic, like you say, how it occurred, because what I thought God was saying to me was not what he was saying. But what he wanted still occurred. And I love that.
And it occurred so beautifully. I mean, and I really am so proud of everything that we've done over the last year with the Huddle Co.
Me too.
I mean, it just warms my heart every single time. And every single time, especially the last year, with the world's in shambles and everything's crazy. And, just to put out one little family's story on there, and just to see the amount of people that don't know these people, but they feel like they know us because of what we share with them.
It just means a lot to us.
It does.
We cannot get on board with it. We call them Huddle Magics, and that's when we open the Venmo and we raise funds for families. Kam has the Venmo on her phone, and so it dings every time someone gives a donation. And I'm telling you, for like 4 days, we're all just beside ourselves, emotional and not being able to really hold it together because we still are not used to the goodness of people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's crazy the amount of people that show up every single time. And I mean, sometimes, there's somebody that can only show up one time, but it never matters. It never matters. I mean, 50 cents makes my heart about jump out of my chest.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you ever think that you would be getting on your stories thanking everybody for helping you help a family in need?
Never. I mean, it's just so special.
It's so special. It's so special. And that's all we say, our God is so charming, how it all came about and how it is still doing it, and we have the group of the 5 of us, the Huddle Co. It's Ashley in Oklahoma, Brenna in Utah, Sherry in Canada, and Kam is in Durango. And I've never had a group of friends like this. We've gone, how long? 3 years without any type of dissension or, anger between the 2 of us. Or we probably should have some so that it can be whole relationships, but we won't because we love each other so much. And
I think the podcast really has helped. Well, it's definitely helped all of us even dig deeper from the questions that we ask each other, you know? I mean, even
Yes.
dig deeper and know each other even better.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so many times, like, on our group message where somebody will be like, I'm having a pity party today. I need you to
Yes.
help me with that.
Right.
And, you know, I'm not ashamed at all that they call on me for that every time.
Yes.
Like, I'll be that hard ass.
Everyone plays a part.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's why she's Kam Elliott.
Yeah. And, you know, usually with women, there's emotion and there's jealousy. And that's something that I've never experienced before is, you know, Sherry and I were talking the whole time you were on the plane. And I was telling her, she was like, I'm so happy for you guys. But of course, just wish I was there. And I was like, Sherry, I hand to the Lord, if I could call her pilot and have him turn the plane and bring her to Canada, I would do it. And I would have just as much fun watching y'all. I'm being honest. I would have just as much fun. It's a fly.
Yeah,
I saw it on your hat.
Yeah, he keeps trying to bite me.
But I've never had that before. I've never had to where if Ashley flew to me or Ashley flew to Brenna, we'd have the same emotion. I cannot wait for Canada borders to open and Sherry to start making her visits and the joy that's going to come with that. And it's not just joy if she comes here. It's just going to be solid joy. And I know they feel the same way about you being here, you know, and I've never had that before, ever.
No, me either. Yeah, I've never even really had a big group of girls, you know. I mean, I've had the same best friend since I was in junior high.
Me too.
And that's it. I mean, I have a bunch of guy friends, you know.
Me too.
And my husband's friends, you know.
Yeah.
But
yep, it's definitely from the Lord because of how smoothly it's gone for how long it's gone.
For sure.
You can tell he's anointed each of the relationships and each person plays a part in the 5. And we talk every day. Every day. If we don't talk, it's like, whoa, like what's happening? And then Instagram was down and it was like, where are you guys? Sherry's in Canada, so we can't really text on our phones with her. So we rely on Instagram and WhatsApp. So
I think it's neat that something you always say is you got to learn to get out of the way of yourself. And I think for both of y'all, and I think for the podcast you've done, that's kind of what you've had to do because, you know, if you don't follow Farmerdolls, I mean, she does a pretty mean tractor karaoke. And that's really my first memory of her outside of, you know, you telling me about her. But that's when I first started following her, that's what I remembered. And I was talking about, you know, about y'all getting out of the way of yourself and all that, and how by doing that it's allowed all this stuff to continue to grow and just keep adding.
Well,
you know,
it's an honest thing that I saw her and I said no. Like I was like, I know who my friends are. I know what kind of eyes they have. I know the look they have, and I know who I would get along well with, and that ain't it. She's not even going to look in my direction. First, remember, we thought she was very, very young. And Jay goes, I texted you right away. And she sent me a picture of her and Jack. And I was like, thank the Lord, she's either older than we think, or he's 20 years older than her. And I remember Jay going, we're just going to pray she looks 10 years younger than she is.
I do remember that.
And I texted Kam after she told me, because we're only 4 or 5 years apart. And I was like, I can't remember being happier of someone's age, because I didn't want you to be like, you weirdo, like I'm just in my 20s, you know. And just the thing, you know, the whole getting out of your own way and God giving us a second chance. Like I couldn't seal the deal on our relationship, so it's almost like he sent Kam back for me when I was dumb and I missed it. Yeah. I just thought she was like this cheerleader, Western influencer, too pretty, too popular. She wasn't my people. And do you know what's funny is one of our dearest friends and one of our biggest supporters of the Huddle Co. says the same about me. She says that she passed on me, and that exactly what I was saying about you. And she was like, what would we have done if I wouldn't have come back around, you know? And so then since then, you know, just like Kam was born not far from here where we live. My parents live not far from where she lives in Colorado. Jackson's sister is not far from here. We have ties to each other that are always going to keep us with each other. This summer, we figured out that we can meet in Amarillo, so we grabbed the boys. Her husband doesn't like to fly very much, like a lot of men don't, and we found that we can meet in Amarillo, so that's a huge trick up our sleeve. So I don't know, your friendship and your relationship, I say you are there were two people on the life raft that God sent, and you were the other person.
Do you want me to stomp on your toe?
Yes.
Give you something to cry about?
I didn't want to do this podcast today, and we got we'll touch on it in another episode, but if you're friends of ours or been around for a long time, you know what I'm talking about. We just had a really tough summer. Because of that, I wouldn't come back to this mic because I didn't think that anyone would want to hear some weird lady cry into a mic for an hour. So I want to thank you for helping us get back. It's just really nice to be back here.
It's really nice to be here with you.
I'm proud of you.
I love you.
I love you, and I'm proud of you.
Kam Elliott, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Having you on here.
You have to tell what we're about to go do.
What, devour a lot of food?
Yes.
Yes, we are. I guess we have another friend met through social media has cooked.
Not Jason.
Oh, I thought that's how you met him.
Nope, Jason came and bought some sweet corn.
There you go. I remember now.
Jason is a buddy of mine. He's a local farmer, and he came and stopped by and bought some sweet corn, and we developed a friendship. He came and had enchiladas and a cigar with us around a fire, and that seals the deal for me for the rest of ever. Meanwhile, he was cultivating a friendship with Kam over Instagram, and so we went and saw him the other day. He was raking hay, and she got out of the truck, and he goes, "Oh, come on," like that. It was the cutest thing you've ever seen. If I could go back, I would video it.
For sure. I told you guys this. I've never been recognized so fast in my whole life.
So
And
awesome.
so he told us, we went down to Fort Worth for a few days, and he texted Kam and said, "I'm going to smoke a bunch of meat and bring it over to you guys Monday night." So
we're fixing to have a feast.
yeah,
Give me some of that Texas barbecue.
And there you go.
we earned it.
We earned it.
Kam, what a pleasure. And, it's really great to be able to call you my friend and to call you our friend, and both somebody that we both rely on a bunch.
Yeah.
I sure
Some-
love you guys.
We love you lots, too.
Sometimes I have to tell Jay, can I just have my friend, please? I need you to go. He has his 3 guys, but he loves you so much because it's such a deep relationship. But sometimes I have to be like, I just needed one friend. Can you let me have her? And God's like, y'all 2 are one, and this is your best friend now.
I love those days when I get a call from you and I miss it because I'm, in the tractor doing something, and then I get a text from Jay, and I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, round 7 of the week.
Oh, Lordy. Well, babe, what else you got?
I think that's it. We could do this all night long.
Yep. Well, as the song says, the road goes on forever and the party never ends.
I love you.
I love you too.
We sure appreciate y'all listening today. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can search for us, Moving On Podcast. That's 3 words, on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you. With ways you're figuring out how to drop the ropes in each of your own lives, and even ways that you're not, hell, that's just as entertaining to us. See you in a couple of weeks.